All right, so this is the video going over the solutions to the chapter review that I assigned you yesterday to go over sections 2.1 to 2.3. So let's start with problems 1, 2, and 3. We're looking for the patterns, right? So for number 1, and you had to state what the pattern was as well, not just list the numbers. So you've got 64, 32, 16, 8, and 4. So if you look, you're dividing each of these by 2, right? So that would make your next two numbers 2 and 1. And again, we're dividing by 2. All right, for the second one, right, we have 3, 4, 7, 11, 18. So the first thing that jumped out to me was that 3 plus 4 is 7. So then 7 plus 4 is 11. 7 plus 11 is 18. So you're going to add the two previous terms. So 11 plus 18 gives us 29. And then 29 and 18 give us 47. So you're going to add the previous two numbers. All right, and then number 3, this one's kind of tricky. So if you have memorized your perfect squares before, this would have probably jumped out at you. So each of these are perfect squares. So like the first one, we have 1 squared is 1, 2 squared is 4, 3 squared is 9, 4 squared is 16, 5 squared is 25. So the next two, I'm going to write those in red. So we'll go over here. So then 6 squared is 36, and 7 squared is 49. Right, so you can say that the sequence are perfect squares. So it's the square of its position in the sequence. All right, and then we jump down to number 8. So for 8 through 11, you had to state whether it was a true statement, false statement, or not a statement. So number 8, every polygon is a quadrilateral. That would be false, right? So it's a false statement because quadrilateral is a 4-sided polygon, and we obviously have some polygons that have more than 4 sides. Number 9 is every triangle is a polygon. So that would be true because in order to be a triangle, it has to be a polygon. Right? It has to have those 3 straight sides and be a closed curve. For number 10, that's going to be false, right? Because 3 times the number can't be equal to 9 times that same number. And then 11 is not a statement, right? Because it's asking a question. It's not clearly stating a fact or, yeah, so it's not stating a fact. It's asking if it's cold outside. It's not saying it is cold outside. All right, so for number 12, there we go. For number 12, we had to go through each thing. So for part A, we're negating that statement, so it would be girls do not have blonde hair. All right, for part B, we're adding that universal quantifier, so that upside down A, so we have to add in that word all. So it's all girls have blonde hair. All right, for part C, we're adding in that word some. So we have some girls have blonde hair. And then finally, for part D, we're going to negate what we have in part C. So that would be no girls have blonde hair. Right, so you really have to pay attention when you are negating, because for part C, if you just said some girls do not have blonde hair, that's still going to be true. Remember, when we negate statements, we have to change their truth value. So if it's true, we have to make it false. So sometimes we have to be a little bit more specific. All right, so then we've got the same kind of process for 13. So for part A, we're negating our statement, so it would be 3 points are not collinear. Right, but the definition for points that are not collinear is non-collinear. So 3 points are non-collinear would negate that statement. For part B, we're adding in that word all. So all 3 points are collinear. Right, for C, so we can add the word some, but really there exists would make a little bit more sense in this one. So there exists 3 points that are collinear. And for part D, we're going to negate part B. So some 3 points are non-collinear. All right, remember we have to add in the word some and not when we're negating something that has the word all in it. All right, so for 14, we are negating statements. So when we negate that, right, so the word some is going to change to all, and in this case, why is it changing colors on me? There we go. So it would be all sports are fun. Okay, apparently it doesn't like being purple. All right, for part B, again, we have to change that word all to some, and we have to add in the word not. So some babies are not beautiful. Right, remember when we're negating, we're changing the truth value. I'll change the color when I'm done. Right, so no students like math would be, right, so no is going to be some students like math. And then finally, it says some students in the class are sophomores, so we're going to make it no students in the class are sophomores. Right, so again, when we're negating, we have to change it from true to false or false to true. So you really have to be careful, and especially when you've got quantifiers like some and all or no in there, you have to really make sure that you're changing that word as well to truly negate your statement. All right, so what did I do? Okay, so apparently I deleted these. I had them all typed out. But for 15 through 18, we'll just talk through this. So for number 15, it should be a disjunction. Hold on. Here we go. So 15 is a disjunction, and it is true. 16 is a conjunction, and it is false. 17 is a conjunction that is true, and 18 is a disjunction that is true. Sorry for the sloppy handwriting. My iPad's like standing up, and I don't feel like laying it down just for this one part. So, all right, so then number 19, we had to write this as an if-then statement. So I would say, if a pen has ink, then it writes. Okay, and then for number 20, two parallel lines never intersect. So you could say, if two lines are parallel, then they never intersect. Or you could say then they do not intersect. Either of those would be fine. All right, so for 21, we had to write the converse, the inverse, and the contrapositive. So the converse, we're just switching the order. So for that one, it would be if two angles have a common side, then they are adjacent angles. All right, the inverse would be so for the inverse, we're negating the two. So it's if two angles are not adjacent angles, then they do not have a common side. And then finally, the contrapositive, so we're flipping and negating. So the way I like to do this one is I can either take the converse and negate it, or just take the inverse and flip it. So I would say if two angles do not have a common side, then they are not adjacent angles. Right, and then you were supposed to go in and tell me which one of these, if any, was true. So for 21, the only one that would be true is the contrapositive. Right, because we can have angles that have common sides that are still not adjacent, right? Because remember, adjacent angles can't have anything that overlap, even if they share a common side. All right, so for 22, doing the same thing. So we start off, if line AB and line CD are non-coplanar, then they are skew lines. So we will do the converse, which flips it. So if, I'm just going to do AB and CD, right? They should have the line symbols over them, but I can't type those. So if AB and CD are skew lines, then they are non-coplanar. Right, inverse, right, we are negating the two statements. So if AB and CD are coplanar, then they are not skew lines. In the contrapositive, we negate and flip. So that would be if AB and CD are not skew lines, then they are coplanar. Right, and so for 22, all three of these are true. Apparently I switched colors while I was writing. Okay, so this wraps up that assignment. If you all have any further questions, please let me know. And just remember, if you did not get this submitted by the time you've watched this video or by the time I've posted it, then you will not get credit for this assignment.